Hello everyone, this is Paradox again, and I'm back with another video that is a Cartographer tutorial. And today we're going to be looking at Cartographer's Mimics and Traps pack. Previously it was just Mimics, but this pack has received some new functionality and features, and so it's been expanded a little bit. To get started, we're going to type the same thing we did in the loot editions video, which is trigger dev box, and we will see we will get a Mimics and Traps dev box. Since we're only going over Mimics and Traps, we're going to delete the rest. And if you place it down, you'll see all the features that are inside are right here. There's a lot of them, more than the loot editions, but a lot of these are pretty simple and easy to go over, and so I'll just start with them as we go. The first one of these is the Mimic, which is returned from the original version of the pack, and the Mimic is a trap that can be placed on a trapped chest specifically that turns it into a special mob when the chest is attempted to be broken or open. Let me put down a trapped chest with golden apples to demonstrate. The Mimic is made by right-clicking the frame on top of the chest. You'll get a chat prompt that notifies you it's been done, as well as some visual. And then you can remove the Mimic simply by pressing left-click in Creative, and it will remove it. Let you know in chat as well, and it's there as normal. Notice that the chest hitbox vanishes when the Mimic is active, and this is one way to actually detect that there is a Mimic, as well as the trapped chest. Trap chests, there's also no redstone around them, or also can be suspicious if the map is using mimics. And so what mimics will do, let me arm myself appropriately, is if you left or right click on the mimic, it will awaken it and spawn the mob and delete the chest. And so I will demonstrate what happens if you right click on the chest. The player's damaged, slowed briefly, and the mimic awakens. The Mimic is a Cartographer mob abilities mob. It has a couple different effects. Now. And it does a lot of damage, which is the point. It also gets a free boss bar. It goes above it. And notice under half health, it also heals. It's almost dead now. And you'll see when it dies, it drops some XP. And the original chest, labeled as a Mimic carcass, and now a normal chest with the items inside. If the Mimic is attempted to be opened via left-clicking, which you'll see instead, is it will stun the Mimic and not damage the player. Only for a very brief amount. It also does a little bit of damage to the Mimic. And you can just get all over there. Goodbye. Alright. The next items in Mimics and Traps are called Colossus. And Colossus are meant to be basically spawner Mimics. I did not mean to do that. Oh well. I'll just hold on to all of them myself. But, the Colossus, if you give yourself a spawner, place it down, and then put the Colossus on top of it. When the spawner is broken, it plays an animation, and then it will summon the enemy. And Colossus are meant to be tough mini-boss type mobs. They also have health bars, and there are 7 different types. They're themed around the 7 deadly sins, and I'll have a couple more of them lying around in my inventory. And they all have unique and different effects. Their effects are detailed on the wiki, but I can just hit them. They have a custom sound when they're attacked. They all have unique. I can go ahead and just kill them. And there we go. They won't drop anything besides a bunch of XP and playing a unique animation when they die. So they're meant to be surprise challenges that erupt when you occasionally break a spawner. They are very powerful mobs, so I do not recommend spamming them, and I don't recommend overusing them. And they're also differently fit for different areas, so it'd be worth it to test in single player on a test world, which Colossus might fit for an actual area before you actually place it. After Colossi, we have a couple other features that are important, and these are what I would call spawner traps. And spawner traps will modify the behavior of spawners and how they work. And you can only have one of each type of trap on a spawner. So for example, these 5 are one specific type, and these 4 are the other type. You can only have one of each of these. And so to go over a little of what they do, I will give myself a spawner, a zombie spawn egg, just to fill the spawner for now, and of course a weapon. The first of these is the ambush spawner. What the ambush spawner does is it modifies the spawn behavior to make it spawn mobs quickly, but only a limited number of mobs. So if I place this on top of the spawner, notice it now says that it's a trap spawner with activations, and you'll see that the inside of the spawner has changed. If I left click on the sides, not the top specifically, the sides, I can increase the count of activations, and if I move too far away, the interaction that is placed there will despawn, and then the trap can be broken like normal. But let's set this to, say, 4 activations, and sneak left click will do 5 instead of 1. Put myself in survival and normal difficulty, and you'll see that after the 4th spawn iteration, the spawner automatically breaks itself and deletes itself. A player can of course break this early, but the spawner is guaranteed to break after 4 spawns. It doesn't mean that 4 mobs exactly will come out of the spawner, it just means that the mob spawner will spawn 4 times. You could set the count of a custom spawner to whatever you want so that it can spawn in more. You could also set the entity maximum by entities so that it can't spawn while there are mobs nearby, and it will wait until there are available spots. There is a variant of this called the potentials variant, and what the potentials variant does is it will, instead of using a spawn count that you set by left clicking, it will take away 1 potential from the potentials list every time and then put the next mob in the potentials list inside the main spawning. So it iterates through all the spawn potentials from first to last, not randomly, unlike how they normally work, and it will spawn each one of them until there are no more, and then they will go away. The spawner breaks, just like the original version. The next one that we can look at is the controlled spawner, which is very similar but a little different. Again, let me put a spawner down and put a zombie egg in it. Controlled spawner by default has 2 activations instead of 1 because the last activation doesn't do anything. It simply purges the spawner. It's just a debug functionality of how the thing has to work. But if I pump up the activation count to 5 and then difficulty normal, it spawns a mob. But you'll notice that the spawner has been paused. And the reason the spawner is paused is because the controlled spawner will wait until there are no nearby hostiles to spawn the next wave of mobs. And then it will break. Like with the ambush spawner, there is a potentials variant as well for the controlled spawner that will then pull from the potentials instead of pulling from a set wave count. So you could use that instead if you want to make highly specific encounters. The range of the controlled spawner is, I believe, about 20 blocks, if I remember correctly. And so if there's any hostile mob found in that radius, it will not be able to spawn any new mobs. It will wait. These are really good for wave encounters or various interesting rooms in which you might want to have a specific event or trap go off. The last one is the hyper spawner. And the hyper spawner does not have a potentials variant, notably. It's only the normal one because it's a simpler version. It is simply an ambush spawner that activates way faster and runs way faster. So if I put a zombie in here and then set this to, let's say 10. And you'll notice as well, the inside of the spawner is colored and decorated depending on what type of trap it is so that the player can easily recognize, hey, this is not a normal spawner. But a hyper spawner will, in normal, spawn mobs pretty quickly. That goes over all of the basic types of traps, and so now we can show the couple other interesting types of traps that exist. First, we can start with the slow break spawner. And what the slow break spawner does is very simple. If I go into peaceful, just so that the mob spawner doesn't spawn, and activate it, you'll see that while the player is within a short distance of it, we'll give it a Mining Fatigue 1 aura. And you'll hear the occasional sound of the Guardian that signifies the actual effect. It also plays some particles, and all this spawner does is basically make it slightly harder to break itself and the area around it. It's about 8 blocks, which is slightly double of the player's available digging range, but it basically just prevents and slows down the player trying to break it. You'll see if I break the spawner, it removes it, plays a little animation, and also instantly cleanses Mining Fatigue, so it doesn't linger for the extra second that it normally would. The next type of trap that exists is the spawner redstone trap, and what that is we can place a redstone spawner, and I won't bother filling the spawner just because it's not necessary, but I can place some blocks around it and then place observers facing into the spawners in this way. And it only interacts with redstone in this specific way with observers in these specific types of setups. They must be perpendicular, the block must be touching, and there must be a block next to it. If the setup is like this, It's not going to work. It requires a block they're facing. And so what this will do is when this spawner is broken, it plays a effect that will then, on all sides, break those blocks, and then thus the observer will be set off and it will trigger redstone. It only interacts in one specific way because it's intended to be used as a replacement to observer traps for the use with data, most specifically with data packs that set them off by accident. And yeah, that is all for the redstone trap. The next trap is the false spawner, and what the false spawner will do is is meant to integrate mostly with BSE and with Charon. Is you place a spawner like this, and then we will pretend that this block down here doesn't actually exist. We say we had a bunch of sand surrounding this trap. The false spawner will then mimic the block directly in front of it in the positive X direction and beneath, and place that as a pretend cover for the trap down here. And so what that will do is make this spawner look like it has the appearance of being a falling trap. And when this spawner is broken, it will force drop this block, triggering an update and allowing the other blocks nearby to drop. This is mostly useful for creating fall traps and not having to potentially worry about setting them off by accident or dealing with BSE or dealing with a variety of other problems. They can be quickly and easily set up so that other data packs that work off of spawner mechanics do not interfere with your fall traps. And that is all that they do. The false spawner will be able to copy in the positive X direction any block that has gravity. So all concrete powder, red sand, gravel, and normal sand are the supported blocks. It will drop the block beneath regardless of if it's actually a falling sand block or not, just so it can cause an update and be simpler to place. But it does not actually, but it could be a falling sand block, but it does not have to be, and I recommend you don't use one. That way, a BSE or a BSE or Charon won't accidentally set off your falling trap and then create issues. The final trap added is the disguise spawner. What the disguise spawner does is if I place it and I put a zombie egg in the top, like the other interactions in this pack, it's only on the sides, not the top. So you can interact with the spawner on the top so long as you stay close, and you can change the functionality so long as it's on the right side. If I left click on this spawner with any block in my hand, you'll see that what it does is it disguises how it looks. And so on the top, we can see we have what appears to be cobblestone, but you can still see the particles beneath it. And what will happen is if we set it to peaceful, or normal, excuse me, you can hear a little bit of ticking, the mob is spawned, and after about 10 seconds, should we just wait a little bit longer, the disguise will be removed. The entity still remains in case there was a spawn condition on the trap, but this disguise will effectively let you keep the spawner hidden in the wall, flush with the wall, as if it was kind of like blocked by a placeholder block. I recommend using this personally in a way in which the spawner would still be an exposed type of block, or you can simply make spawners flush with the ground the player can't immediately see with this. They go off very shortly after. And that is all the features in Mimics and Traps. I hope this was informative and you found this useful, and thank you all for watching.